Okay, so we're back. You and Dad packed the truck and the trailer, drove back to Arcadia.
And Shirley and Ron bought a home just through the block on First Avenue and stayed in the ward, and they're still lifelong friends of ours. So it was a great experience for them to live in our home. We felt very comfortable. In fact, we put like our filing cabinets and a lot of things in one of the bedrooms, and I don't know if we even locked the door. We might have locked it just to keep their kids out, but they had access to it, and once in a while we would need something and we would call or write to them, and they would go in and find whatever we needed and send it to us. So it was a great relationship that our home was taken care of. We made more money that year in school than we did regular salary because he had, I don't remember what the stipend was for a year of sabbatical. It was something like 2/3 of his normal salary. So we were still getting income from Cal State LA. We were getting money from rent that paid the mortgage. And when we got to BYU, we went with no application for a scholarship, no intention of a scholarship. But when he got started there, they gave him a scholarship retroactive to the beginning, and so he received money, stipend from BYU for the classes he taught, in addition to his going to school there. And we made more money, put it all together, than we had done. So it was a great year in many ways, but it was a great year financially too, to have that experience that we had not intended, but BYU recognized and rewarded him for his scholarship and his experience.
Okay, so we're back in California. So what was different after BYU than before?
Not a lot. We just fit back in. They put Dad, I think, on the Stake High Council until they could make a change in the bishopric, and then he became the bishop, and I think they were waiting for me to come back from California so I could be called to the Stake Relief Society board. So we were loved and valued and welcomed home, and the kids fit back into school and with their friendships, and life moved forward.
Okay. Talk about Karen's senior year.
In ways, Karen related more to some of her teachers than she did the students. She had a great relationship with her English teacher, and of course she was taking AP English and took the AP exam and scored high enough to get the credit for English that she didn't have to. She got college credits for the AP classes, but she was the president of Kiowas, and so and in the band, so she fit back in quite well. I think it was a good experience for her, and she didn't date much at all. She was so spiritual, and besides being really smart, that she intimidated most of the young men. So she managed to get dates to the big dances, but she didn't have a boyfriend. And that summer after she graduated, Pam Hartley was her best friend, Pam Cuff at the time, who was a year older, and they started going to young adult activities, and so she dated some of the eggheads from Caltech, from the real brains, that she didn't ever form any lasting relationships. It was just something to do to fill the time till she went to BYU. When she went to BYU, we had told her, I have to back up, my memory has to get in gear. that the church had counseled, which they had, that young people stay home and take advantage of the wonderful junior college system, for instance, in the state of California, and then come to BYU later. And so we told her that was the church's counsel, and if that's what the church counseled, that was what we followed. We were very obedient to following direction of the brethren. But then BYU had some sort of a meeting with seniors, and not just all seniors, but they invited the seniors that they wanted to come, and they met out at Westwood Ward, right behind the LA Temple was where they met, and these BYU people talked to them about BYU, and they said, "You are the students we want at BYU." And so they encouraged all of these people that they had invited, which included Karen, to come to BYU. So she came home from that meeting, and it was okay for her to go to BYU now. She wasn't breaking with the counsel of the church in staying home, and we said, that's fine, but we're not sure we can afford to send you. And so at that time, seminary was just a 3-year program. You graduated at the end of your 3rd year, but the 4th year was optional. Now they've changed that, and it's a regular 4-year program. So she quit seminary in the middle of the year, probably at Christmas time, after she had attended this meeting with our blessing, and she got a job at Marie Callender Pie Shop. Reed had worked there too. It was owned by 2 brothers that were members of our ward. They had started that business there. And so we let her go to work and quit seminary because that was too much to try. She had a busy academic schedule. And she saved every penny after tithing. She used to get tips, and she started out as a strawberry girl and then became a waitress there. And the tips then were paid more in quarters. That was the kind of money people used to tip. And I had fun with her after her shifts, helping her count and package her quarters. And she saved quite a sum of money that paid a lot of her expenses at BYU. And then we wrote to Walt Bowen, who had been Dad's buddy in Afton as a seminary teacher. He was now a professor of religion at BYU, and wrote to him and said, Karen is coming to BYU. Can you just give us a little direction on what the procedure would be for her finding a part-time job at BYU? We just wanted his counsel. And he wrote back and said, my secretary is graduating, and so he hired her as his student secretary at BYU, so she had a built-in job. And of course she met Mark, just barely returned from his mission, and he was living in one of the boys' Desert Tower dorms, and she was in one of the girls', and they were in the same student ward. He said to me one time that he was attracted to her spiritually before he was attracted to her physically, and that if he had realized she was a freshman, he probably wouldn't have asked her out. But mid-year, she placed a frantic telephone call back to her dad, to her parents, and said, I think I'm falling in love, and I'm too young for this, because she wanted to study abroad. She had lots of plans for what she wanted to do as a BYU student. And she said, can I come home at the semester and have a semester abroad? She wanted to go to Spain and study Spanish. and to keep her single. And her very practical father said words to the effect, you don't have to go clear to Europe to study. You can come home and go to Pasadena City College if you don't want to stay at BYU. And that wasn't the answer she wanted to hear, so she stayed at BYU and ended up getting married that August. And she had one more year after that because she was a student the first year they were married, but Michelle came along very quickly, and so that ended her BYU experience as she became a full-time mom, and worked some to help as they were both students, and then Mark was a student and she was a stay-at-home mom. So I think the kids did just fine, moved back in. We were happy to be home, we were welcomed. Dad became the bishop, and life moved forward in great ways. The same year that Karen was a senior, our stake center was under construction. It wasn't completed yet, the one that was right across from the high school. And so seminary was held in, I think it was a Lutheran church. We used to call that Church Row because there was our stake center, and between our stake center and the library east on the corner, there were, I think, 3 other churches of different denominations, but our stake contracted with the Lutheran church to use their building for our seminary programs that year until our building was ready for occupancy. And the man who had taught the sophomore class was a social worker, and he was not a good seminary teacher in my estimation. He would go and tell those kids, you are worse than any of the street kids that in Los Angeles that I deal with professionally. So you know what that does to kids. That class was out of control, and he had a job change and left. And so the stake president asked me if I would take over that class, and it was almost a losing battle. I worked really hard, and we got through the year okay. And the next year, it was Old Testament that year, and the next year was going to be New Testament, and I wanted, because a teacher in me wanted to continue doing this. And it was early morning. I was home in time to get Julie's hair fixed however she was going to wear it, and get her lunch made, get her off to school. And I wanted to teach again so that I could teach the life of the Savior, I thought. And to start from scratch and to prove to the kids and myself that I was a better teacher than what appeared, because I fought the hard battle to bring that class into control after what they had gone through the first half of the year with a out-of-control teacher. But Dad said, no, you will have opportunities later in life. Your role was to be home with your little children, getting them up to school, and he was right. And so I didn't teach again until years later when I taught seminary again, when our children were all grown. But I had that experience that year, and that helps you get involved. So I was on the Stake Relief Society board. I was teaching seminary. I taught beginning genealogy in Sunday school classes, and I had a full plate of activities, and then supporting Dad as the bishop.